Could the 76ers look to draft Joel Embiid's replacement in this year's NBA draft? Of course, his age, his injury history, his contract, all reasons that a lot of fans and maybe the Sixers would want to move on from Embiid sooner rather than later. So on today's show, we're going to take a look at two center prospects in this year's NBA draft that I think could be drafted within that top 5 through 10 range, where the Sixers do imagine to be landing at either 5 or 6. So today, we're going to be talking about Khaman Maluach, the center out of Duke, as well as Derik, the talented center out of Maryland. Both of those guys should be there and will be there and could be great picks for the Sixers at number 5 or 6, but both very different in how they get things done. Before we dive into each of these prospects, what say you? Do you think the Sixers need to draft a Joel Embiid replacement this offseason? I've seen a lot of the comments in the show. Some people are really for it and moving on from Embiid and getting the next guy. Others not so much. I'm curious where you stand on this whole thing. Give me a Y for yes if you think the Sixers need to find that successor, or give me an N for no if you think you can still see Embiid producing on the court in the years to come. Now, me personally, and I've talked about this in the show a few times, not super in-depth, but I would not go and draft a center with their potential top 5 pick. Now, it's certainly a possibility, right? And that's why we're talking about it on the show. Just because I wouldn't do something or I might not think something happens doesn't mean there's no chance it happens, obviously. I'm not the one running the Sixers. So I think there is a possibility that they decide and they look at the roster and say, hey, we like Adem Bona, but he projects more as a backup. Obviously, Joel Embiid, no idea what's going on with his injury, so let's try to find ourselves our center of the future. I think the Sixers are better off going after someone who fills more of an immediate need, like in that wing spot, to try to win immediately next year, but definitely a possibility. And with these two talented center options kind of falling in there right there at 5 to 6, I could see a way the Sixers go this route. So let's start with Khaman Maluach out of Duke, the very, very talented freshman, standing at 7'2", 250 with a 7'6" wingspan, and he actually has a 1 inch taller standing reach than Victor Wembanyama, if you could believe that. And when you think of Khaman Maluach, he is a prototypical center build. When you think of a paint patrolling, paint protecting, finish at the rim, throw down a lob center, that is Khaman Maluach. This year for the Duke Blue Devils, still playing in the Final Four of the NCAA tournament as of this recording. Just under 9 points, 7 rebounds, 1.3 blocks. Obviously very efficient from the field because he really only takes shots at the basket, but also a good free throw shooter, which could project some potential future shooting ability, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The numbers don't jump off the page, but he's playing on a very talented Duke team, of course, with Cooper Flagg, with Concanupal, so he's not really asked to do all that much. The Athletics' Danny Chow had a little bit of a scouting report on Maluach that kind of encapsulates who he is as a player and his interesting rise to where he is now in his basketball career. Calling Maluach's rise over the past 4 years meteoric feels like an understatement. 4 years ago, the South Sudanese refugee became the youngest ever enrollee at an NBA academy at just 14 years old, his first time playing organized basketball. Just 2 years later, at 16, Maluach became the 3rd youngest player ever to play in a FIBA World Cup. The following summer, he was by a wide margin the youngest competitor in men's basketball at the Olympics. He's had several lifetimes of experience in these past 4 years alone, yet we're still just at the ground floor. And Maluach, that's what's so intriguing about him as a player, sort of similar to Joel Embiid when he was coming out of Kansas, has not been playing basketball for as long as many of these other prospects, so does have a lot of theoretically untapped potential. Now, where he really thrives as a player, he is a play finisher, whether he's throwing down a lob, grabbing an offensive rebound, putting it back, rolling hard to the paint off of a screen. He is going to finish plays at the rim. And as I mentioned briefly, his lob catching ability with his athleticism, his size, his crazy wingspan and standing reach, he can throw down lobs from all types of angles, bad pass or not. He'll catch it. He'll throw it down. There was one I saw when Duke was playing Bama that Colin Canupel threw him. I thought, no chance he's throwing that down. He grabs it like over his left shoulder, brings it in. Just absolutely insane stuff there for Maluach. A tremendous offensive rebounder, one of the best offensive rebounders in the entire nation right now as a freshman, and that projects to stay the same way in the NBA. He's a great rim protector, has good instincts, and uses that length to his advantage to deter shots at the rim, but he's also a good defender in space, and this is partly why his rebounding numbers don't look all that good at under 7 a game, because he does switch out on screens a lot and does guard the perimeter a lot because he can move. He can move his feet and guard out there on some of these smaller players. So a lot of times he's not just sitting in the paint, although he does that very well. He's on the perimeter a good amount, which is why some of those rebounding numbers don't quite look as good as maybe his skill set would indicate. Now, he does have his weaknesses, of course. No prospect is perfect. And although he does do a good job guarding the pick and roll when he's in position, and he, can move in space well, as I mentioned, he's not always in the right position at all times. Now, again, he has been playing basketball for all that long, so a lot of his weaknesses just come from a poor feel for the game, poor IQ for the game. He isn't quite sure on the finer, minute details of playing basketball at the college level, and obviously won't be in the NBA. So that type of thing, whether it's screen setting as well, just knowing where to be at all times and being comfortable on the court, that still does need to come together. Now, his shooting consistency is interesting because before his time at Duke, he actually did display some skills with a little bit of a post-fade jumper. He was shooting the occasional three, and the free throw does look good, and it falls at a decent clip, but he has yet to really display that at Duke. Too much of a mid-range jumper or a three-point shot. If he could develop that, that's where some people start to see the Joel Embiid comparisons, but I'm going to slow down on those here in a little bit. The post offense, again, something that he's shown flashes of, but hasn't been able to develop enough at Duke, and they really haven't asked him to do it, so we don't know if he really has that in his bag or not. In general, just has a lot of very raw skills that need to be refined, that he needs to work on, again, because he has not been playing basketball for all that long. And his defensive production, I mentioned this earlier, because he is guarding the perimeter a lot, he's not always in position to grab rebounds or block shots. So I think his numbers, the 1.3 blocks, the 6.8 rebounds, while they're certainly good, they don't stand out to you. So he hasn't had quite the defensive production you might ask, paired with some of his lower IQ at times. But I think he's better than what the production has shown. Now, in terms of what he might be at the next level, a few different NBA comps that all kind of make sense, right, for the kind of player he is. Very similar to fellow Duke member Derik Lively when he was coming out for the Dallas Mavericks back a couple of years ago. He's springy. He's athletic. Now, Lively was maybe a little bit of a better prospect at the time, but Maluach has still been tremendous, in that mold of a Rudy Gobert kind of player, although Maluach does have some better touch and a little bit better offensive game than Rudy Gobert has, and a Mitchell Robinson, but these kind of centers that are your prototypical pick and roll, hit the offensive rebound hard type of thing. But where the Derik Lively comp does come in a little bit is, we saw Lively in the playoff run last year show a little bit of an outside shot, and there is a hope that Maluach can maybe develop that type of outside shot at some point. My final thoughts here on the player before we head over to Derek Queen. Look, he gets the NBA. He's going to be a switchable rim protector. That's just what he does. He can guard really everywhere out in the floor, both in the perimeter and in the paint. Very much a work in progress on offense. But you will take that when you know the high floor and the even higher ceiling he has as a defender, and he has immense upside, because if he can ever get that offensive game down and he can develop, a post game and maybe even a face-up game, although that's pretty doubtful, or if he can develop a three-point shot, at least a catch-and-shoot three-point shot, and shoot 34% on open threes, you're talking about one of the best centers in the league and someone who's in the mold of Joel Embiid. And for the people that want to compare these two, because their paths are similar and their games somewhat similar, like Embiid was just a better prospect coming out, had a little bit of a more refined offensive game. I don't think Maluach will ever be at the offensive level Embiid is at right now, but certainly does have very, very high upside. Before we get to Derek Queen, the other center we're going to talk about today, Phillies gear is available now. Chatsports.com/Phillies25 to get that through our friends at Fanatics. Plenty of shirts, jerseys, sweatshirts, hoodies, hats, anything you could possibly want to represent your Philadelphia Phillies as they begin their quest to make it back to the World Series. We're up to a strong start so far, 3-1 on the year. They will play tonight on Wednesday, April 2nd. So be sure to support the squad and support us here at Chat Sports by going to chatsports.com/Phillies25. It'll let Fanatics know that Chat Sports sent you. That link will be in the comments section as well as the description of today's show. All right, going to the other top center prospect in this year's draft. That is Derik Queen, the freshman center out of Maryland. Very different from Khaman Maluach. Derik Queen, a little bit undersized. Stands at 6'10", 245 pounds with a 7-foot wingspan. Numbers look better for Queen than for Maluach. 16.5 points, 9 rebounds, 1.1 blocks, 1.1 steal. Shooting just over 52% from the field. So you can see higher scoring numbers, but the efficiency is way lower. And I think floor and ceiling, if you haven't heard of floor and ceiling, if you want NBA draft news and info on these prospects, Floor and Ceiling on YouTube has some of the best breakdowns on these individual prospects. Had a great breakdown on Derik Queen that I think, when you talk about the unique kind of player he is compared to other center prospects, this puts it perfectly. Derik Queen is one of the most unique and captivating players in this draft. He's a 6'9", 6'10 playmaker who posts up, faces up, attacks off the bounce, pushes in transition, and creatively play makes for others. The 20-year-old freshman has some questions concerning his below-average lift and positional physical tools, and he'll also need to cut down on the turnovers, but he's very productive, and I think he's a real winner. And when you talk about productive, we talked about his regular season numbers. Maryland, of course, no longer in the NCAA tournament after getting bounced by Florida. But in those 3 games that they played, including 2 wins for Derik Queen and Maryland, almost 19 points per game, just under 9 rebounds, shooting 50% from the field, 75% from the line, with 1.3 blocks per game. And in those 3 games, also went 3 of 7 from 3, which not a huge sample size, but good to see him knocking down a couple shots. And Florida even said, he's the best player we've played so far in this tournament. Now, where he really excels and what really makes him a very unique center prospect is his positional ball skills. This guy can legitimately, grab a rebound, bring it up the floor in transition, face up, make the right pass, keep the ball moving. He has a great handle for a guy, not just his size, but for a college prospect in general. It's very rare to see from a guy that's 6'10", and despite being slightly undersized, he does finish at the rim at an elite level. He's a quick decision maker, so he's not just dribbling, fumbles the ball, doesn't know what to do. He is smart when he has the ball. He knows the right play he has to make. As I mentioned, the transition playmaking is a plus in his skill set. He can push the ball in those transition opportunities, and he is a very good rebounder as well. So a little bit unconventional, but the kind of thing that maybe you're more looking for in a modern NBA big. Now, where he does struggle, rim protection. Look, at 6'10", 245, he's never going to be that guy that's, flying up for blocks and making it tough for guys to finish over him, especially with his limited athleticism. That's the other probably big knock on his game is that, he has some of these finesse kind of skills, but the lack of rim protection compared with the lack of athleticism, how high is his upside for a guy that isn't an elite athlete or an elite rim protect? He does struggle with turnovers a little bit, but he has the ball so much. It's kind of expected for a young guy like him to make the mistakes here and there. You hope that gets cleaned up as he makes his way into the NBA. His shooting production is an interesting conversation because he has a good-looking free throw, shoots well from the line, but he took a lot of mid-range jumpers this year. That's why you saw, despite him being a good rim finisher, he only shot just over 50% for a center, which isn't great, especially for a guy that doesn't shoot many threes. He took way too many mid-range jumpers at Maryland, playing next to a big rim-protecting center on the floor at the court, on the court on the same time, and shot 30% from the mid-range. So it's just not something that he was very good at, but it's something that you hope progresses because maybe even the biggest question with Derik Queen is what is his role going to be in the NBA? He doesn't have prototypical center size or the rim protection athleticism to be that 5-man holding it down. And although he does have some perimeter skills, the lack of floor spacing ability, it's a question of whether he can actually play the 4 full time. So what is his role? He's kind of a tweener. He's going to have to develop more skills one way or another for an NBA team to really want to put him out there on the floor and draft him knowing what his role could be. Derek Queen kind of in the mold of a Domantas Sabonis, Alperen Sengun. That's the high end, man. If he can really put it all together with the decision making, the IQ, the passing skills he has, he can be one of those types of players. Now, of course, the big thing with each of those guys is like not great defenders, especially Sabonis, but that's the kind of trade-off you get when you have somebody who could be the center of your offense. Now, of course, the shot might never be able to come around. Like Sabonis and Sengun, they can shoot those middies, right? And they can really attack off the dribble. If he doesn't quite develop that shot and never refines his skill set, you're looking at Sixer legend, by the way, so I don't want to hate on Thaddeus Young too much because he was really good back in the day, but obviously not an all-star, high-end level kind of player. That's maybe more where you could see Derek Queen at. But regardless, even at his floor, he should be a good player. You could at least bring in off the bench to provide you some instant offense. So my final thoughts here on Derek Queen, obviously tremendous unique skills. For a big man, we don't really see this all the time. But how does he adapt to the NBA when guys are faster, guys are quicker, guys are better defenders? He can do it against college-level defenders at his size, but when he's matched up against some of the elite, can he still show these same skills? And does the shot develop? That's the key for Derek Queen, because if it does, wow, he would have tremendous upside as an offensive hub, someone who can be a threat from outside, put it on the floor at 6'10", a great rebounder, a great passer, and a playmaker. All of a sudden, you have the makings of somebody who, to me, that sounds like an all-NBA level player, in my opinion. But looking at these two guys, who makes more sense for Philadelphia? They should both be there at number 5 and number 6, wherever the Sixers end up. So who would they be more likely to draft? For me, if I am going center, which, again, wouldn't be my decision, but if I am, I think Maluach makes more sense as a Joel Embiid replacement. It makes more sense on this team. He's the more traditional center who's going to set hard screens, roll to the paint, protect the rim, those types of things, finish those lobs, and be that athletic presence down low. I love Derek Queen, and maybe one day Derek Queen ends up being the better overall player if they both reach their ultimate upside. But I think when you think about the Sixers with Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, Quentin Grimes, at least on the roster as of right now, I kind of want somebody who could be that big paint protector down low, because I like Adam Bona, but I like him better off the bench. You need someone who can guard the paint, and Derek Queen might be best next to somebody who can do that. And so I don't know if I trust him full-time as my long-term starting 5 without someone else down there to do that job. So I think that Khaman Maluach would be my pick between the two, but they are both very good prospects. But I'll ask you, let your voices be heard. Love to get you guys involved here in the show, because that's what we do. It's a two-way conversation. I love to hear your feedback and your opinion. So if you were on the clock for the Sixers and these were your two center options, who would you take? Give me a KM if you agree with me and you go with Khaman Maluach, or give me a DQ for Derek Queen.